Greetings. Hello. Thanks all for being here today. My name is Alyssa McConkey, and I am the Chief Program Officer with EarthForce. And today I have the great pleasure of being here with our CEO, Vince Meldrum, to talk about EarthForce, to talk about the model that we use, environmental action civics, and share some stories. So, hey, Vince, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. I
Excellent.
wonder if you could start us off with just talking a little bit about what is EarthForce?
Sure. Well, EarthForce is a national nonprofit. We're committed to engaging young people in the local policy and practice making in their community to solve environmental problems. And so we're kind of a combination of a civic education program and an environmental education program with some project-based learning and service learning kind of splashed in there. We work nationally, actually a little bit internationally, but I think right now we're working in 21 states and two provinces in Canada. So we're I think, an exciting alternative to environmental and civic education.
Awesome, thank you. And obviously, we're doing this work out in all these communities you're talking about, and we have a model that we use, right? And it's been known as the community action problem solving process. It's been known as the Earth Force process. It falls under the environmental action civics work that we do. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about, like, when we say environmental action civics, like, what are we talking about, and what is this model that Earth First uses in order to achieve our goals?
That's a big question, Alyssa. So I'll start with what is environmental action civics? So environmental action civics is a new idea. It builds off from the action civics movement, and the action civics movement essentially says that we should teach civics by engaging young people in civic processes. We take that a step further and say that we should teach people about the environment by engaging them in the civic processes around environmental decision making. And so at its core, what that means is that we would teach young people through experiential learning, how to be involved when their community makes decisions about environmental issues. So whether it's deciding whether to move to solar power or if they're deciding how to deal with flooding in their community, our argument is that young people should be involved in those processes and should be part of the discussion and the decision making. So how we do that is we have a process. And as you've alluded to, our process has a lot of names, interestingly. We call it at this point the Earth Force process. And the Earth Force process has 6 steps. I'm not going to go through all of them for you because I think it's a little burdensome. I think it's easier just to understand when we talk about what we do. And so we guide young people as they identify problems in their community. They say, this is what we want to work on. This is what we care about. As they research the root causes of those problems. Why do those problems exist? How did they come to be? They start to reach out and talk to stakeholders that live in their community to better understand that problem and really looking for what is the inherent barrier? What's the thing in the system that allows that problem to continue? And as they do that, they identify the policies and practices that are in their community. They figure out who oversees those policies and practices. They do some research around them, and then they come up with a plan to change those policies and practices, engage the folks who oversee them, have discussions, offer alternatives for them, ways for that change to happen. And then they actually work with the community members to enact that. Finally, they celebrate and review. So they'll look back and say, we could have done this better, but we did this really well, and we created these really excited changes. And so and sometimes when I talk to people, I say it's just an obvious process, right? It's how you solve a problem. And the trick, what we offer, I think that is special, is we teach adults how to do that with young people from the ages of 10 or 11 up until they're 17 or 18 years old.
That's a great explanation, Vince. Thank you for breaking that down for us. I think sometimes it's really helpful for folks to, when they hear about this work, to maybe get some stories or examples of what that looks like. Do you think you could share with us a couple of stories about what it looks like to take action in your community, this environmental action civics work?
Well, Earth Force stories are the very favorite part of my job. Every year, I get to travel around the country and meet young people who have been doing this in their communities, and that's the best thing ever, I'll tell you. So I'll have a couple stories for you. I'm going to tell you one that is probably our most famous story, at least right now. And it's about a group of young people in Alexandria, Virginia, who found black mold in their classroom. And as you know, black mold can be really dangerous. It's dangerous to your health for people that are in the rooms. It can be something that kids can carry home. So it's a challenging problem. So anyway, they found black mold in their classroom. And the first thing that they did is they did a study of it. And so they got samples of the mold. They took it from air samples and also direct samples from the mold that they had found. They studied classrooms across the school and sent those samples out to a lab to be analyzed. And what they found is that there were 13 different types of black mold in the school, and 6 of those were problematic for human health. So the first thing that the young people did is they went to their principal and they said, "This is the problem that we've identified. There's black mold in our school. You know, at the very least, we can't be in the classroom that we're in anymore." And so the principal right away moved them into a safer location. But they found mold spores across the school, and so the school worked with them a little bit to identify ways to do some some remediation. They took out some of the black mold, they painted over the wall, so on and so forth. But after doing that, what they found was it didn't really solve the problem. There was still black mold in the school. And so the kids went to the school board and said, "This is the problem. This is the challenge we face. How are we going to solve it?" And the school board said, "We agree, big problem, big challenge. We just don't have the money to do remediation around mold. You would have to talk to the mayor." So these young people went to the mayor. They talked to the mayor and said, "This is the challenge. It's the problem." He said, "I agree. I also don't have the money to solve this problem." And along the way, they met a state senator. And they worked with that state senator to solve what they found to be the core problem, which was that the state of Virginia is one of 12 states in the United States that doesn't require schools to test for mold. It doesn't require schools to inform parents and teachers when mold is found in the classroom, and it doesn't require schools to use the highest form of remediation. And so they worked with this state senator to develop an indoor air quality law as an amendment to an existing regulation, and got it passed by the Virginia House of Delegates. It was later signed by the then Virginia governor. And so now the state law in Virginia is that they have to do these things. They have to test for mold. They have to inform the occupants of the mold. And they have to do remediation up to a high standard. And so that, I think, is kind of the peak of what an Earth Force story is. Young people who really dug in, really made a policy change and made a big change that affected not just themselves, but people all across the country. And so that's one story. A second story that I would share with you is about a group of young women on the southeastern side of Chicago, and their problem was a little bit different. When they started to study their community, what they realized is that they were facing seasonal flooding in a way that they hadn't before. And so one of the things that happens with climate change is that the rain happens just like it always has, but the rain is much more intense than it used to be. And so when we get these intense rainstorms, when they get them in southeast Chicago, the combined sewer system, the sewer systems combined with the flooding system, and when the sewer and rain systems combined in a big rainstorm, they would overflow and they would see sewage flowing down their street. So the young people started to study that, and they found there were a number of problems and causes. They found that one of the things was that local residents had placed the downpipes from their houses, so they went directly into the sewer system. They found that the streets were not designed to handle the kind of sewage systems or the kind of rain that they were seeing, all of these things. And so they started working with a local alderman. And as a way to first act, they worked with this alderman to increase awareness among community members about the downpipes going into sewage systems. And so they're working with the alderman to get funds and an approach that will allow them to move their downpipes so that they go into the street instead of into the sewage system. The second thing that they've done is they've continued to do a community education program. And so they're doing all kinds of education around the community with a goal toward getting the community to a place where it can advocate for a change in the combined sewer outflow system where they are. And so it's become like a 2.5 year, 3 year project where these young people are really digging in and trying to adapt their community to the changes that they're seeing around climate change. There are a ton more stories, but I think that gives you a sense of the types of things that young people do in Earth Force programs and in environmental action civics generally.
Thank you. Those are great examples. And I think it's cool that one really highlights the change of a policy. And then the Chicago story really kind of highlights a change in practice, community practice at at the community level, but changing practice as a group. So those are two really great stories. Anything else you want to share with folks watching if they are wondering about our organization and the work that we do?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of things. I mean, one of the things I would share is that we have a great staff around the country who do this work. And so that's super exciting. I think everybody would love working with our people if you get a chance. And so I think that is great. The other thing that I think I would share that is kind of an imperative right now, as we're sitting here talking, last week or the week before, the Supreme Court handed down a case about the EPA and the EPA's ability to regulate carbon. And essentially it said that the EPA doesn't have that ability, that capacity, or that rather doesn't have the authority to regulate carbon in the way that it was. And so there's been a lot of talk about what can the environmental movement do if the EPA can't regulate. And I think our answer is that the power in the United States always has, and by my opinion should, lie with the people. And we should get engaged, right? And we should be involved in the decisions around carbon, around alternative energy sources, around the impacts of climate change, all of those things. And really the way that we do that, or one of the ways that we should do that, is we should be preparing our young people now so that they can be involved in the future. And processes like the Earth Force process, where young people get these essentialist experiences of identifying problems that they care about, of working with stakeholders to discuss and debate those issues, and reaching out to the people in charge to make change, that leads to a lifetime of civic engagement. And if there's ever been a time when we need a lifetime of civic engagement around environmental issues, that's now, right? I think we can't wait any longer. And preparing kids now for what's going to be, something that happens to them or that they have to work on for the rest of their lives, I think it's an imperative, an educational imperative, a policy imperative, a moral imperative. And so I think that's the energizing, the exciting part of what we do. And I hope that some of the people that see this agree and think about ways that they can do that as well. And we're here to help.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Vince. You all can check us out online at earthforce.org. We've got a lot of information about the work that we do. We also have a direct link to our resources site, earthforceresources.org, where you can find loads of activities, lessons, and lots of ways to support young people in doing this important work. So that's all for today. Thanks so much, Vince, for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been fun. Take care, everybody. Have a good day.